Okay, now we do, because we do the history now of Africa, Asia and the Pacific. William Carey played a key role in initiating this movement, the Protestant mission movement. Many other Baptists followed in taking the gospel to the four corners of the earth. So that's today there are nearly 10 times as many Baptists in Africa and Asia as there are in Europe. 10 times more than Europe. But that's true for many Christian churches in any case. Africa. The first Baptist mission station in Africa was established in 1845. Here we are, we start with at the same time when Hamburg and the German mission started, and also Africa started in 1845. It's a time of a lot of missions. In Cameroon, of the English missionary Alfred Sarker, he mastered the local language and reduced it to writing. And that's a lot of times what a missionary had to do. Even today, if we look at the northern part of Mozambique, there are about 6 language groups and they don't have alphabet. They have nothing written ever in their languages. So and they are totally unreached.
Where is this?
Northern part of Mozambique.
So there are unreached areas.
That if you talk about Jesus, they will ask you, that man you're talking about, that he lived this side of the mountain or that part side?
Sure.
They don't know the name. I mean, unreached. The Operation World Book wrote in their book that it's maybe one of the most unreached places in the world. So if you go into there, imagine, you don't speak that language, you don't know the culture, you don't know the ways of doing, so you need to learn. You come to teach people, but first you have to learn. You have to learn the language, you have to speak the language, because otherwise you cannot communicate from your heart if you don't know the language and the customs and the way of living. And that is the things that you can read in Carey's work and biography, the ways how he promoted going to the area to learn the culture, understanding the people, learn the language, translate the Bible. But first you need to read, teach them how to read and write. You need to make an alphabet for them, so that they can take a pen and write, because they never did that before. You see, well, it's not the only way, but I mean, if you want the thing to grow at the end, you need to give them the Bible.
But how come? Because it's Mozambique, right?
Yes.
And Mozambique they do speak, I think, it's Portuguese.
Yes, I also speak Portuguese.
Yeah. So if they do speak Portuguese, I believe that there is schools all over the country, right?
Yes.
So to those guys, they don't even speak Portuguese.
You get some of them who went to school, if they are lucky. In some places there are local schools and they learn to speak Portuguese, and the schools are not good. They really, you go to grade 6 and you still can't read and write, and many of them go out of the school before grade 6. Because each place has its own challenges, so I can tell you a lot about Mozambique because that's my work. But then at the end, they can write Portuguese, but their own language, which they speak at home, is not a written language.
That's interesting.
So there's no, if you understand, there's other people from Mozambique, they cannot speak Portuguese. So if they cannot speak Portuguese, even if you just bring them the good news in Portuguese, they don't know what you're talking about.
They don't know, or it's their third language, that they learn something in school, but they don't know it well enough to understand it well.
Okay,
is that why they're unreached?
That's why you have to.
It's because of the language barrier.
To learn
well, the history and so on. I can tell you a lot about that, but that's not.
It's just something.
And how the first movement came into that area in 1945 for the first time. somebody came in with the gospel. But in any case,
Yeah.
the principles of mission and so on, William Carey teaches us a lot about that. And then you also, the young church experienced persecution and harassment from unsympathetic authorities. The first 6 missionaries that John Saker died of disease. That is also very often things that happen in Africa and in mission areas. You go in, your body is not used to the illnesses of that area. I know that some of the missionaries coming from England into Mozambique the first years, they carried their own coffin with them because they had a life expectancy of 4 months. They die of malaria illnesses. There were not medicine for it at times. They carried their own coffins because they know, if I'm lucky, I'm the average. I've got 4 months to live now, but I'm giving myself now for the message to this like that.
Sure.
It's amazing things that you can read in those biographies. Not for nothing was the west coast of Africa known as the white man's grave. Many other missionaries from various societies came to Cameroon, and by the end of the 20th century, about 63% of the population was associated with it. And this was the first movement in Africa, typical of many African countries south of Sahara. The Christian community has grown from virtually nothing in 1900 to become the majority religion seen by 2000. In 100 years, they've grown from nothing to the majority of the... But that doesn't say anything yet. The problem is many people became Christians, but their lives were not changed yet. Like the leader in Kenya, I forgot his name now, was one of the second most corrupt person in the history. They told him, but he was an elder of his church. Because he's church member and he's a church leader, but he's the most corrupt politician that existed nearby. Because he didn't change the life yet. He didn't change the worldview of the person. He's not a new person yet. So that's many times what happens in Africa. Also, let me tell you.
Romans 12:1 they haven't grasped that yet. They haven't grasped that yet. And that can take time.
That takes time. Thomas Bauer was the first Baptist missionary to Nigeria, 1849. Maybe we can write that also in here. 49 is Nigeria. Because Nigeria is also quite an influential country in Africa, and where a lot of things happen. But he died after 1 year of living. But for more than, but a lot of people at the end, others followed, and the Christianity grew there. In the same year, the president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, was also a Baptist. So he became a Baptist. Then in Congo, his astonishing growth from virtually nothing in 1900s to 95% of the population in 2000. But you need to go to the basic belief system, because you see here the way that it works. So the numbers sometimes doesn't say a lot.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Because on top you see how people act, what they do, but they act because of of a value system. So if you only change the act but not the value system, you didn't change the person.
Of course.
And the value system is built on a belief system. Faith.
Yeah.
Everyone has faith.
Yeah.
It just differs in what you believe.
Exactly. But we all have that.
It's your worldview, the things that you believe, this is what's life about. And I can tell you a lot about ways in Africa how people think about their faith system and the spiritual world and how they act upon it and so on. Because you need to understand that you cannot just put a church there and do all the right things
And expect it to make...
and people in Africa will do the right things. They like to do it. But that doesn't say the belief system has changed. And that's a very deep thing. It comes from centuries. It's like the lady, quickly tell you that Josie, she was sent to Uganda to train 100 nurses in how to handle AIDS patients. So she came and she were there, and so they teach her about germs and about viruses and how they transmit from one another. There are tests about it, and they did very well, all of them. And when they came to the practical work of looking after people, they did better than she ever expected, because they are people, and they did very well, looking after, better than she expected. Final exams, everyone was so happy, because everyone did very well. So the fires were high, and they had a festival there when she's going away. And then one of the ladies stood up and she said, Josie, thank you that you teach us now for a year how white men get sick. I just want to tell you how we get sick. There's witches flying around here, and if they bite you in the back, you get sick.
Yeah.
So what did she manage to do? Nothing. Because they didn't believe anything that she said for them. And they will just fall back to the old system when she's not there. But they did all the right things, and they wrote the tests, and they gave the right answers. And when we told the story there in Kenya, one guy stood up, one pastor stood up, he said, yes, but that's how the church also functions. They do all the right things. They will say that they have received the Lord. They will go to the theological school, and they will do the exams, and they will do good sometimes. They come back, and they will give the Lord's Supper, and they will baptize people. But they don't believe that God will ever be near them. It's not for them. And that's the mindset. And if the mindset is not changed, you didn't do anything. So just to see this in context when we talk about a lot of numbers. The real transformation is slow. And it takes a lot of time. And the ones in Africa who are transformed also suffer. Because their way of thinking makes them isolate them from their own families. And from their own belief systems. And makes it so difficult. I mean, how many times we have a pastor there, he's studied, and he's from the Reformed Church there, and his child is sick. And his family say, you need to take that child to the witch doctor. Witch doctor, they call it.
That's
and it's not his decision, it's his uncle's decision, because the family system is like that.
Yeah.
And he just refused, and he have to flee from there. They can even kill him if it's necessary. He can live there far from his family, on his own, crying. But he said, I want to serve God. So it's a very deep thing. So transformation is always a miracle. For us also, with our materialistic culture also. Our love for money and doing things this way. There's a lot of things that we have to die of. So in each culture there's a lot of things that we believe that's not the truth. And it becomes so normal that we think it's normal. And if there's a real transformation, it's a totally different thing. If you understand this, and the act has consequences. Actually, the belief system has consequences there because it goes to your value system, to what you do with it.
Yes, the consequences is pretty much your.
If you want to change that, because now we come, that one is drinking, he must stop drinking. And it's like if you've got an apple tree and you don't like apples, you want pears. So now you go and take off all the apples and you stick pears to the tree. That's what you do. But the tree didn't change.
No.
His value system, the trunk, doesn't change, and his roots, his belief system didn't change.
Okay.
So that thing helps you a lot, if you can understand. Don't just talk to the nurses about germs. Understand their worldview and start where they are for real understanding and reaching your and it will take much longer. Sometimes it's much more frustrating. You need a lot of years and a lot of. But if you go that way, there's something happening through the Spirit. Amazing things. But in any case, you can see here more than 1,000 Congolese had placed their idols at the feet of the at the missionary, and they burned it and so on. So there were deeper conversions that happened. But not long after that, the political history in Congo, many years, Zaire under President Motabu has been traumatic, characterized by war and bloody conflict. But they were 95% Christians. You understand? It doesn't add up.
Doesn't add up. No.
So you need to find out why. And the why is something to do with this. You've changed the way of acting, and maybe have churches and Holy Communion and a lot of things happening. But the value system and the belief system, maybe it takes longer to change. So, Nigeria. Thomas Boer was the first Baptist missionary to Nigeria in 1849. He died after 1 year or years later. It's amazing, the stories of missionaries. And they all made mistakes. They're not the heroes. God is the hero.
No, of course. I just think for the courage to go out there to a country that you don't know, I think
but
that in itself
examples
is more than what I can do.
and
So.
encouragement of us to give everything. Because, not because we have to, because we want to. It's from our belief system of Christ who gave everything to me. It became part of me, and therefore I'm also becoming like Him in giving everything. Not out of my own power, because I don't have. But through the working of the Spirit, I become like Him. And the missionaries gave us a lot of practical, brought the idea to the field in practice, applying the truths. And they made a lot of mistakes, but at least we can see some application of biblical truths happening. So I always love these stories. My children also loved to read them when they were small. We've done the Congo. Then there's no accurate statistics. I'm jumping over quite a few things here. But then the Baptist Church is virtually in every country south of the Sahara in Africa. Precise statistics is difficult to obtain because of confusion in terminology and things like that. The Evangelical Church in Angola, the fruit of the missionary labor of the AEF, and I have to do with this church in Angola. It's one of the bigger churches in Angola. Igreja Evangelica in Angola. They also speak Portuguese. The fruit of the missionary labor of AEF, and they still struggle. And there's still a lot of war and killing one another. one Christian to the other. So the body, and then later on there were 3,300,000 Baptists in Africa, gathered in 16,000, 17,000 churches. But as they say, the statistics is not very reliable. Okay. Then in Asia, the most people belong to a highly developed religious system: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, etc. But then after William Carey, probably the most famous Baptist missionary went to Asia after William Carey was Ludson in 1812. That is now a bit earlier, at the same time here more or less. India. Okay. Myanmar, actually, not India. Myanmar. Give us an idea when it happened. A priest and translate the Bible again, so it's all again about doing the basics. Brought him 17 months of imprisonment. Himself was in the 17 months in the jails, and you know, in Myanmar's jails, I don't think was very friendly. After his release, he continued to labor in Burma. You get some missionaries when they go to jail, when they get out of there, they just leave the mission. It was too bad, too difficult to handle, and you can't criticize them. You don't. But then there are people like this man, 17 months in jail. When he came out, he continued to work. It's like the one Mozambican. He was trained to evangelize, and he started evangelizing, and nobody came to the Lord for 3 years, and everyone criticized him, but he just continued. And then he was caught by the government and put in jail. And they told him, and they hit him, and and at the end, when he got out, they hit him on the hands, and there was blood dripping from him. And they told him, if you're going to talk about this Jesus anymore, remember that you can be free if you don't do it. If you talk, we will catch you again. So he told them, well, I'm going out and I'm going to continue, because it's not me. What I've heard, I cannot keep quiet. So be ready to come and catch me again. So he went out again. And they caught him again, and they nearly killed him. Told him the same thing. If you stop preaching this man, we will leave you. You can be free. He said, before I go out, I will go and teach you about him again. Don't be confused, because God sent me, and I need to listen to him. So he went out, and the third time he got in the jail again, and nobody came to the Lord in that area. He was working and testifying, and nobody came to the Lord. So the third time when he went into jail, they treated him so badly, he died in the jail. But then the miracle happened. The people in the community talked about him so much and said, that man, what made him do this? And a lot of people after his death came to the Lord. I mean, this is the type of stories that you hear. This is a Mozambican doing the Lord's work against all odds. Amazing. The first Kairan, that is a group of people, the Kairan, was converted in 1828, and the gospel began to spread rapidly among them. By 2000, Baptist community, the largest Christian denomination in Myanmar, 500,000 members. I'm just touching some points here. Another remarkable expansion of the gospel was Assam, northeastern province of the British India. And that was the Garos was the first tribe to receive the gospel. The Naga people, an entire village was converted in one day. almost all Nagas were Christian. One of the most dramatic occurrences of mass conversions ever have been witnessed in the 19th century. Battles took place against the Telegas at Ongole, India. In 1853, suggestions were made that the work be discontinued. And after the work, the preachers read the Bible to the workers and taught them the gospel. Then these people returned home, they passed on the good news. So, and this is a very, very important principle in missions everywhere. It's not you going to do the work, it's you teach people to teach. So they learned and accepted and went out and did it and spread the gospel. It was not the missionary, it was the people themselves. And Christmas morning 1877, no less than 2,300 persons presented themselves for baptism. It's their own people evangelizing. And the missionary thought, well, this can't be. So he put them off. He said, no, I'm not going to baptize you. And he began examinations with them. But the enthusiasm and the way that people came to him, he was convinced they are ready. So by the close of the year, 9,000 has been added to the church. And there are a total of about 2.3 million now later on. Okay, then amongst many people in Asia, but the sacrificial labors of hundreds or thousands of missionaries have borne fruit in many converts and churches. In China, hundreds of thousands of house churches developed. And we know that in China, all the churches were they were persecuted. So they went underground. They were very interesting. I wish I could have time to explain it to you. But Alan Hirsch, in his book, he investigated the church in Acts, and he was looking where in the world do we have movements like in the New Testament.
Yeah, probably China.
And the Chinese church was one of them, where they worked on the same principles than what happened in Acts. And underground they are spreading like mad and growing. It's amazing how they grow without leadership, without buildings, without structure and organization.
They didn't have Bibles.
And so on. Then in the Pacific, hundreds of tiny islands, and you read about amazing stories on those islands. How a whole island became Christian and so on. It's amazing stories sometimes. Brought whole peoples and islands to Christianity. And I've read some of those stories. One man went to an island where he didn't want to be. He was on the wrong ship. And he stayed with the people, but he was a Christian. And at the end he discovered that the Lord sent him there. And the people came to the Lord. Amazing stories. The largest population specific area are to be found in Australia, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. And Australia can probably be dated to the first meeting in Sydney, 1831. And the first Baptist church was in 1851.